When you see discomfort as a cue that you're stepping into the unknown, it kind of reframes it. And, this is really the core of the book. And it's the place where we can build ourselves and our businesses to create breakthroughs almost on demand, because it becomes a signal that, hey, you're getting into unknown territory. This is where new results are. It's not something to shy away from, to be scared of. It's something to move towards, no matter what's happening in the world.
That's so counterintuitive. So, because usually if you think like, oh, this is hard, this is unpleasant, that is a cue to stop what I'm doing and I should turn the other direction. And you're saying that we can reframe it and think about it as almost like a signal to proceed.
Exactly.
Wow.
And the best part is, and I get this question a lot, like, I have so much discomfort in my life. What I love about it, though, is once you hunt it, you go through it, you're free of it. And you've got access to all the peace and presence and joy that's on the other side.
What does it take to put your life's work out there in a really big way? How much can I do with this one precious life? Welcome to The Selfish Gift.
Putting your work out into the world can be really uncomfortable, especially at first. And so many of us use that as an excuse never to do it. We shy away from that discomfort, which is totally understandable, but it is exactly the wrong move if we want to get ahead in life and achieve our dreams. My guest today is here to tell us why. Sterling Hawkins is CEO and founder of the Sterling Hawkins Group, a research, training, and development company focused on human and organizational growth. He's a public speaker whose TED Talk on the role discomfort plays in innovation has been viewed more than 100,000 times. And he's the author of a new book called Hunting Discomfort, which I had the pleasure of working with him on as his book coach and also his publisher at Wonderwell. Sterling, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. You're speaking my language already. Discomfort. I love it.
There you go. So tell us, what is so great about discomfort and what does it mean to hunt it?
It's a good question. And you've got to back up for a second before we just dive into discomfort, because it's not really about discomfort for the sake of discomfort, right? It's a little bit masochistic, even for me. It's about looking for where can you create breakthroughs in your life and in your business and using discomfort for growth, be it in your startup, your team, your bank account, your family, in any area of anything that you're doing. And breakthroughs come from one place and one place only: the unknown. Not necessarily learning something new, but stepping into areas that you haven't been in before. I could read and study swimming until I was blue in the face. I could get a PhD in it, but that doesn't really matter the first time I get pushed in the pool. And when the first time you step into discomfort or you get pushed in that pool, well, it's a little uncomfortable.
Right. And if you let that discomfort stop you, you're never going to get back in. You're never going to be able to handle that situation or that challenge.
Exactly. And it's not just that. It's the fact that these days and the times that we're in, discomfort's almost forced on us on a regular basis. I mean, we've got pandemic fallout, we've got tech disruption, we've got global instability, accelerating change. And, the discomfort just in the world can be debilitating. And it leaves this like wake of uncertainty that, if it's unchecked, can leave many fearful to take risks or resistant to change or just kind of fighting for survival. And that's not a very good place to be.
That makes so much sense. And that, we've heard in the past about getting out of your comfort zone and that being, a piece of advice. But what does it mean to hunt it? Like, what do you mean? What is that? And why would you want to go looking for it?
Well, when you see discomfort as a cue that you're stepping into the unknown, it kind of reframes it. And, this is really the core of the book. And it's the place where we can build ourselves and our businesses to create breakthroughs almost on demand, because it becomes a signal that, hey, you're getting into unknown territory. This is where new results are. It's not something to shy away from, to be scared of. It's something to move towards, no matter what's happening in the world.
That's so counterintuitive. So, because usually if you think like, oh, this is hard, this is unpleasant, that is a cue to stop what I'm doing and I should turn the other direction. And you're saying that we can reframe it and think about it as almost like a signal to proceed.
Exactly.
Wow.
And the best part is, and I get this question a lot, like, I have so much discomfort in my life. What I love about it, though, is once you hunt it, you go through it, you're free of it. And you've got access to all the peace and presence and joy that's on the other side.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is amazing and something I think everybody wants. So
I think so too. That's why I wrote the book.
Right. Okay. So how did you come up with this idea? How did you settle on this concept?
Well, I think a lot of people get into writing books and speaking because they've done something incredibly successfully. They've taken a company public at some astronomical valuation, or they've performed some incredible human feat like climbing Mount Everest on their hands and knees, something like that, right? And I've gotten into this because I've been very humbled in my life and career. And you know the story, but right out of college, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And my family owned this grocery store in upstate New York, which I grew up in. And I said, if I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I might as well create something for retail. And so I created a retail software system with my dad, which, long story short, we sold to a group in Silicon Valley.
Okay,
And
that sounds like a great outcome.
So far, so good. And it got even better when that startup became kind of like an Apple Pay before Apple Pay. It was a biometric solution, exactly like Apple Pay works on your phone, except we had a fingerprint sensor set up next to credit card terminals in store. And we went on to raise $550 million, multi-billion dollar valuation. And it was like a scene from Wolf of Wall Street. We've got models in the office, parties at Four Seasons, offices all over the world, over 700 people.
Oh,
and it's
my
still
God.
looking pretty good, right?
So that doesn't sound terribly uncomfortable.
No, I mean, those were the days. It was a blast. It wasn't just like comfort and certainty. It was like, we all know this is going great. And it's just a matter of time until we all cash out and the company goes public and, Sterling
Wow.
and team buy an island. That was
And
kind
you're
of the plan.
how old at this stage?
Well, we sold it when I was 21. And
Oh my God.
so I'm probably 24, 25 in here. It was insane. I was like, this business thing is easy. I got this. I was already thinking about like, well, here's business number 2 and business number 3. I've got this world handled. But what happened is, anybody that's seen one of those business movies, when you've got models in the office and parties at Four Seasons, it doesn't end well. And it didn't end well for us. We frankly grew too quickly. We raised too much money too fast. When the housing market collapsed, our investment dried up and all $500 million we raised was gone.
Oh my God.
And it was awful.
That's
when the company crashed,
that's uncomfortable.
Exactly. And it got worse, right? Because my whole identity was tied up into this company. And it was what I ate, slept, and breathed for many, many years. And it was what my future was. There was no other option. And so when it crashed, so did I. Not only did I no longer have a job, but eventually I run out of cash. I go from this big, beautiful penthouse in downtown San Francisco to my parents' house, which is not a good look in your 30s.
Nope.
And it was like I was playing out a depressing country song. My girlfriend broke up with me. It was like one thing after another. Like I just can't catch a break. And I developed what's kind of crippling anxiety and depression. Like I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to figure out, how did I fall so far, so fast, and how can I build myself back? And that's kind of where my journey started.
Wow. Okay. So I'm convinced. Yeah. No, you discomfort. That would be supremely uncomfortable indeed. So, and you obviously you've bounced back, and we're gonna talk about Singapore in a second. But you used that experience to learn, how to engineer that bounce back and how to move through difficult times. And now you just want to talk about your work for a second, you take that experience that you had and you apply it to the work that you do with C-level teams from some of the largest organizations on the planet. And you're speaking on stages around the world. So whatever you went through, I guess like it worked for you. Now, public speaking in particular is something that makes most people feel extremely uncomfortable. I think that it's right up there, like more scary than death in some of those lists.
For many, yeah. They'd rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy, as Seinfeld would say.
Right. So was that something that was easy for you? Have you always been good at public speaking?
No. So that's really the beginning of building myself back. Being at my parents' house for far too many months, kind of feeling bad for myself. I remembered this phrase that my mom said when I was a kid. And she said, the way out is through. She said many phrases, she still does, but the way out is through just stuck with me. It's actually a Robert Frost quote. But to me, I'll tell you, it's always going to be my mom. And I was like, you know what? Maybe she's right. Maybe I need to go through the things that are most uncomfortable. And what I'm looking for, which is just like some medium of success, just digging myself out of my parents' house would have been enough for me at the time. Maybe that's my path back. And I don't know. I feel like you've got to go big or go home. So I got this random junk email for a conference in Singapore. People get hundreds of junk mail pieces every day. This one just happened to stand out as I was thinking the way out is through. And I was like, if one of the things that I'm most scared of in life is public speaking, why don't I try it? So I'll never forget, I hit reply on that email and I said, why don't you have me speak? Best Sterling. And the stars must have aligned, or I don't know if the heavens opened up and they said, Sterling, you're on the right path, because I ended up getting on with the conference director. And again, long story short, he invites me to speak and I am terrified now. Like I've signed paperwork to be the keynote speaker at this conference in Singapore.
Oh my God.
Right. Like not some breakout session. Like he's going to have me as, I think it was the opening keynote.
Gee.
I know we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but one of the most important things that I asked him on one of our phone calls was, what's your budget? He gave me a fee and I didn't have anything to lose. So I doubled it and somehow we negotiated. So not only was I flying across the world to give this keynote, but there was money on the line and all their audience. And I'm like, what did you just do, Sterling? This is too much discomfort. And I practiced incessantly. I don't have a job. I'm not making any money. I'm not doing anything. So I would get up and I would just practice. I would write my keynote, rewrite it, create a deck. And my poor sister, she was right out of college at the time. I recruited her to be my audience. So I would practice presentation after presentation. I would memorize components, scrap them, do it again. She probably listened to thousands upon thousands of versions. And I'm not even exaggerating. Like I got obsessive about it. But somehow that did not lessen the discomfort when the day came, because, as I'm sitting in the audience, I'd flown to Singapore, I'm waiting for my name to be called, and I'm just terrified. Like it took all that I had to stay in my seat and not run out of the room. I was so scared.
Even though you were so well prepared.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think most people that have any anxiety about speaking in public, like it, even if you prepare, it's still scary.
Yeah.
And when
even if you totally know your
moment,
material, and that's what this podcast is all about, is like the challenge of putting yourself out there in the world and how very uncomfortable it is. So, okay. So what happened? Did you rock it or did you flop or did you leave? Did you run out of the room?
I feel like when you get into that situation, like the world starts spinning. I forgot what I was supposed to say. It is a good thing I practiced because I was purely on autopilot. I think I blacked out. I was so scared. But I get to the end of the keynote and I'm walking off the stage. I'm kind of covering my eyes like this because I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't know how I did. I certainly didn't want to see the conference director, but the conference director sees me out of the corner of his eye and he starts making a beeline for me. I'm like, oh no, like, are they going to ask for the money back? Or like, am I going to have to pay for my own ticket over here? Like what are the consequences of flubbing that speech? And when he comes over to me, he looks in my eyes and he says, Sterling, that's the greatest talk I've seen in all my years of doing this.
What?
To this day, I don't think he was in the same keynote that I gave, by the way.
Oh my goodness.
But apparently whatever I did landed really well with the audience. And he ended up putting me in touch with all of his conference director friends. And I had a career in my hands. And I'm like, my mom was right. The way out is through.
Dude, that has got to be the most audacious play I've ever heard of. Because that, like, wow. I thought
it almost doesn't seem real in retrospect. I look at it, I'm like,
right.
That happened.
And now it's not just, so that talk led to, yes, a whole career as a professional public speaker. He's speaking all over the place, and the TED Talk too, which,
right.
100,000 views. That's just crazy. So one of the things that you talk about a lot is, well, hang on, it's on the wall behind your head, hashtag no matter what. So you're helping other people to break through their obstacles no matter what. Talk to me about that phrase and why it matters.
Yeah, well, no matter what's exactly that. It's about moving through that discomfort. And it's a commitment to growth. And it's what I told myself when I was at that darkest point. Lying in bed at my parents' house in their guest room, I'm in over 6 figures of personal debt.
Ooh.
I'm staring at the ceiling and I'm like, Sterling, you're going to do something with this failure. You're going to do something with your life. Like, forget your career. Like, this is your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do something with it no matter what.
That's so powerful. Yeah, right. Because that's the thing that's going to move you through the discomfort, right? Is like, no, the discomfort, exactly. I can't let this stop me. I'm going to do it no matter what. So yeah. What are you doing to hunt discomfort in your life now that you're obviously, like, you've gotten over your fear of public speaking, and you must have some tools and some ways to deal with that. But tell me some of the things that you do to actively hunt discomfort in your own life now, and with your community too.
Well, I think what's important is that discomfort is a muscle. Right. I found some research at the University of Michigan. They were doing these brain scans on people. And they watched their brains as they were going through different kinds of discomfort. Physical discomfort, like they hurt their leg; mental discomfort, like cognitive dissonance; and emotional discomfort. You lost your job or somebody broke up with you. And what they found is that they're all processed in about the same way. From a neurological, biological standpoint, it's kind of the same. So much so that they find that you can take Advil and it will relieve you of emotional pain.
Wow. I'm going to try that, right? Next time. I mean,
well, I'm not suggesting that, by the way. I don't think people should be popping Advil whenever they get nervous. That's not the point. But what came out of that, for me anyways, was that, if we process them all nearly identically, we can learn to handle them nearly identically. So we can build our capacity to handle discomfort. And so that's why, initially I started hunting discomfort myself, and now we do adventures all over the world with myself, my sister, with people from the No Matter What community, where we've done things like trek the Sahara, cycle across the Rockies, shark diving in Cape Town, anything and everything. If we haven't done it, it is probably on the list, and we're open to suggestions.
Oh my God, that's so fun. Okay, so it's not just about, so this is something that you can practice outside of, like, the bigger goals. You can just go out there and in a kind of a fun, challenging, like that, adrenaline junkie way, build your capacity so that when life does throw challenges your way, you're a little bit better prepared to cope with them.
That's exactly it. And even though it's fun, some of the situations we get in are nerve-wracking. One of the things we did was we went skydiving, and I'm not somebody that's afraid of heights, really, but you get up in that plane and I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah, skydiving isn't
jump out of this plane.
That's not just heights. Like, that's, a bridge is a height, a building is a height. Right. Skydiving is a whole other thing. I've done it too, and it's nuts. I did it when I was 18. I don't think I'll ever do that again. But that's when I was throwing myself out of planes, different phase. I'm
not sure I'll do it again either, but you start to look at it and you're like, hey, wait, these are some of the same body feelings I have and same thoughts I have before standing up in front of a room or before I meet discomfort in these other places. And so, it's, again, not discomfort for the sake of discomfort. It's, as we're talking about here, building that capacity for it and understanding how you can take that discomfort and use it for growth in any area.
So Sterling, tell me why does this matter to you so much, and why have you built your life's work around it?
Um, well, it started out as just a personal mantra to dig myself out of the hole, right? Like, it wasn't to help people. It wasn't to change people's lives. It was just like, how does 30-something-year-old Sterling get out of his parents' spare bedroom?
Hmm.
And I took the long way. I didn't realize that discomfort was a muscle. I didn't realize, there was a whole system for growth that people throughout history have used, whether they've known they've been using it or not. I was just like, how can I build myself back? And it took years to figure out some of those different components. And it took a whole lot of courage even to get up on that stage in Singapore. Because what you don't see when I'm on the stage is like the fear, the anxiety, everything that I've been through. And it doesn't have to be that way. As we talked about earlier, the pace of change is only accelerating. And we can be consumed by that change. Like I was consumed by the changes in business when that whole business fell apart. Or we can use that pace of change to create something better. And I look at the world today and I say, you know what? We can do better than this. We need a new paradigm for growth, one that isn't based on something that's slightly better than it was yesterday, but how we can create radically new results. And discomfort just happens to be the path of that.
That's so inspiring. So you're driven by a mission to help other people be that change in the world as well. So this is obviously why you felt driven, not just to practice it, but you literally wrote the book on it. So can you
I did. Thanks
us,
to support with you, by the way.
Yay. Can you tell us briefly, and this is my advanced reader copy for those of you watching a video, the advanced reader copy, and the actual trade edition is coming out in hardcover. But I don't have it yet. So tell us about the 5 types of discomfort and your rules.
Yeah. Well, first, it's a mission not for everybody to necessarily change the world unless that's something that they want to do. It's a mission to give people the tools to change their world, whatever that means. It can be on a small scale with their family, a community, a local group. It can be with their business. It can be with a startup, something regional, or maybe something at global scale. The same 5 things work exactly the same, no matter what you're looking to transform and no matter the scale. So to answer your question, right, there are 5 primary kinds of discomfort that we deal with as human beings. And that's the discomfort of facing reality, seeing things as they really are. The discomfort of self-doubt, which I had a lot of back in Singapore, and I know many people deal with. The discomfort of exposure, like being seen for what you really are. And then challenges, the discomfort of challenges that we all face. And maybe the most important discomfort of them all is the discomfort of the unknown and the uncertainty of tomorrow. I think we're a little bit lulled into, let's call it a comfort zone, with weather reports and stock reports and the news and everything telling us what's going to happen tomorrow. And we forget that tomorrow is not promised at any level.
Wow, yeah.
For any person. And, it could be something that we know could happen, God forbid an accident or something else. And it might be something that nobody saw coming. You could put the pandemic in that category. And how do you still move through any of those discomforts to get your results? Because you won't get them unless you confront one or maybe all of them.
Okay, I'm kind of triggered just listening to you.
It's your fault. You helped me write it.
All those things sound super scary. Okay, so let's go through the solutions or the remedies, approaches.
Yeah, well, it is scary, but like we said, you build your capacity for it. And the first step, as you'll see in the book, is how do you expand your reality? How do you take how you're viewing the world and shift it?
So this correlates to that first discomfort about seeing things as they really are. Okay. So yeah.
Exactly. I look at the world like quite simply. Everybody wants results, whatever version of that is. And I think if you ask pretty much anybody, even my young nieces who are 3, 5, and 1. Everybody except the 1-year-old could tell you your results are correlated with the actions that you take. It's pretty straightforward. What's a little bit less clear and that we don't often think about is that the actions we take are based on our view or our beliefs or our perspective of how we see ourselves, how we see others, or how we see the world. And if we don't have the results that we want, it's probably a function of a faulty view or a faulty perspective about, again, yourself, another, or the world, that we have to go through some discomfort to potentially shift. So that's the first piece. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So you mean like thinking that things are, oh, I can't do that. That's not possible for me. Or I tried that already. I already know what that's going to be. And so debiasing yourself and having like a beginner's mind kind of a approach to your situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I was working with a big, it's a grocery company. I won't share the name of the person or the name of the company, but I was sitting down with the CEO, and they're wildly successful, by the way. So they're starting strong. And we were talking about innovation, how to create a culture of innovation, how to create some more results with some of the projects they were working on. And this CEO could produce more data around why they had the results they had than I even knew was possible. He had flip charts and reports and bar graphs and pie charts. And after a while, all of it was just looking like it only served backing up their view of how things worked.
All the reasons why I'm stuck and all the reasons why I'm going to stay stuck and that you can't help me and there's no solution.
Exactly. And it's not that those are wrong, by the way. You know, data is data.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that something else isn't possible in the midst of it. And so it's uncomfortable letting go of some of that information about how we see the world because it looks real.
Okay. Okay. So what's step number 2?
Step number 2 is get a tattoo. And this deals with the discomfort of self-doubt, where you commit in a way where there's no going back. It's effectively what I did with the Singapore speaking engagement, even though I didn't know what I was doing. All I knew is that I signed the paperwork and I was terrified. But there was something calling me forward beyond myself. And what I found, doing research and writing and all the things that I do, is that when you're looking to grow, it doesn't work if you don't have something on the line. You need to really commit in a way outside of yourself with something that's going to call you forward through that discomfort, or it's all too easy to fall back.
So you sign the contract, pay the deposit, announce it publicly, whatever it is, that's getting a tattoo. Okay.
I'm hooked. Exactly. Commit in a way where there's no going back.
Okay. And then what's step 3?
Step 3 deals with the discomfort of exposure. And that's the worry of kind of opening yourself up and being accepted. And what we do to handle that is you build what I call a street gang. Not because I look like I've been in a street gang, obviously. And it's not about doing something illegal. You don't need, a bandana or cut glass or anything else. It's about surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you achieve the growth that you want to achieve. Maybe most importantly is the accountability of component. Okay, you've gotten that tattoo. Now you need people that are going to help you get there. For me, it was a close friend and my sister that kind of got me through those hardest times. For others, it could be a friend, a significant other, a boss, a coworker. It really doesn't matter who they are, but there's key roles in the street gang that everybody needs to fill to be able to achieve what they want to achieve.
And this isn't just about encouragement, or this is about holding you accountable. This is about showing you where you might be deluding yourself, or
exactly or helping you see a better version of reality.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And so you've so you're seeing things clearly. You've got a tattoo. You've got a street gang. What's number 4? That has to do with challenges, right? Challenges.
That's right. We got to deal with challenges. And the antidote to that is a step I call flip it.
Okay.
Like, how can you use those challenges to your advantage? It's a very kind of stoic philosophy of the obstacle is the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what you're dealing with, a massive failure like my own, a lack of budget, a lack of time, no matter what it is that you're facing, I promise there is always a way to use those things to your advantage. You just have to stop and figure that out.
You tell a story in the book that I just love, and I have repeated it to so many people. Tell me the story about the chocolate maker in Italy. Because this is just such a perfect
chocolate
example.
Maker. So it's a story I've told many times too. It's one of my favorites as well. It's there was a chocolate shortage coming out of World War II. And many of the chocolatiers in Europe figured, okay, well, either we make less chocolate because we don't have access to as much of the cocoa beans, or we just shut our doors. And many of them did that. Well, there was this particular chocolatier in Italy who said, you know what? Maybe we don't have to just make less chocolate. Maybe we don't have to shut our doors. What if we add something to the chocolate to make a different product? And that's one of the flip it perspective shifts. Like, what can I add to this situation to make it different? And what he did is he ended up adding some things to make, of course, the product that everybody loves, Nutella. And he became wildly, wildly successful. Their family is one of the richest in all of Italy still to this day. And it came because they had a massive challenge. They couldn't get enough chocolate.
I love that. It's so inspiring, especially right now, coming out of the pandemic, where most of us found ourselves in situations where we had constraints that were just beyond our control. And certain businesses didn't just survive, but really thrived and pivoted and changed what they were doing. Okay, so what is step number 5?
Step number 5 deals with the discomfort that kind of rules them all, the discomfort of the uncertain, the unknown of tomorrow. And it might be the most important and my favorite step, which is surrender. How do you accept things exactly as they are and exactly as they're not? And the two most important components of what you need to surrender are, maybe obviously you have to surrender the time and the resources and what it's going to take to achieve that goal. And maybe more importantly, surrender any resistance to giving those things up, or to how the world is, how you are, or how others are. And when you can let go of those things and still work towards your goal at the same time, there's a tremendous amount of power there.
I love that. I love it so much. Okay, so Sterling, tell me about your experience of writing this book. The wisdom and insights in there are super, super helpful. What was it like? What about the writing process itself? Was it uncomfortable? Did you face any discomfort when you were writing?
It was a journey for sure. It's probably the closest thing I will ever do to having a baby myself. It was incredible. I thought it was going to be difficult and uncomfortable to write a book, and I didn't know the half of it going in. Not to scare anybody away, but it really was almost a journey of self-discovery. Like, I've talked a lot about these things. I've worked with people and companies for coming up on a decade now, but putting it into a book was something else. It was something distinct from that. And getting all of my thoughts and material out on paper in a way that was cohesive was difficult. And again, I couldn't have done it without Maggie, your coaching, and the team at Wonderwell. I don't know how to write a book. And frankly, you've all been part of my street team, showing me the way how to do those things. And I had to let go of how I thought it was going to go and how I wanted to do it and what I thought was right. And you kind of pointed me in the right direction, and being able to get all the thoughts and perspective and research that I have in a consumable form.
Yeah. It's hard. It was
hard, but it was awesome at the same time. I wouldn't have had it go any other way.
Especially just like having a baby is awesome in retrospect, right? It's not always that awesome when you're going through it. But people are like, so are you going to have another? Are you going to write another? And you're like, whoa. I'm still just trying to get my body back.
Like, give me a minute. Let me launch it first.
So what literally was the hardest part, Sterling? I want to really dig into this with some specificity, because this is, this is what holds people back from putting their gift out into the world, from, creating something and sharing it. Is like, I don't know how hard it's going to be or in what way, but I know it's going to be bad. So like, give some insight about what literally was difficult about it. Was it the time? Was it the,
So I know exactly what it was. It was starting. And once I started, we did a little bit of pre-work together.
Mm-hmm.
We put together, I think you call it a book plan, where I was able to kind of see the chapters, how I understood them, and get a sense of what the layout might be and what the market might be. And
we do a really
enough.
Detailed outline for each chapter, so you know where you're going. And that, so that was helpful in getting started.
It was hugely helpful. And even then I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I can do this. People have been telling me for, 5, 6, 7 years, Sterling, you've got to write a book. And admittedly, I am late to the party. I was like, I have to do this. And it was that step of going from that kind of preliminary work in the book plan to saying, okay, Maggie, I'm ready. Send me all the details, send me the schedule, send me what I have to do. Let's start working through this project together. And, the day I made that decision, it was a lot of work to come after, but it was freeing because I already made the decision that I was going to do it.
One of the things that was super great about working with you, Sterling, aside from just getting to absorb all of this, material, is that you were always good with your deadlines. You were always, you would always show up.
I wouldn't be Mr. No matter what if I wasn't at least doing that.
I knew that. That's what I said to my team when I first started. I was like, this guy's going to be great because, he's getting a tattoo. He's like, this is no matter what. So, but you and I developed a bit of a unique coaching rhythm, something that I hadn't done quite in that way with other authors. And that is that we did a sort of like almost like it wasn't even a draft. It was sort of like so normally you were on a really fast pace. You were doing one chapter a week for a period of time. And a lot of people do a chapter in 2 weeks. So that's kind of like twice as fast, but it's tough because you've got to really, you got to power through it. But what we did was that you did like a kind of a rough draft or a bit of brain dump into a document. And then I gave you some interim feedback, and then you went back and completed the chapter. And I felt like that was a really novel way of working. Was that helpful? Is that part of, tell me a little bit about how you got over the challenge.
Hugely. Yeah. Having that kind of cadence with you, for me, where I thought was perfect, because I had all this research and all this work I had done and papers I had written and blogs I had released and keynotes I had delivered. And so I was able to kind of preliminarily put together, okay, here's what I think this chapter looks like. And then to come together with you and have you kind of prune and adjust and say much more this direction and not so much that direction, helped me get that chapter to a point where it was ready to go into editing.
Yeah.
And I will say, it took a while to get into that cadence too. I remember the first chapter I wrote was like 3 times too long. And you're like, Sterling, don't do that. It's too much to read. And I was like, oh, okay. So I need to dial it back a little bit. I need to be a little more focused. Like, don't throw everything in. I've got to have much more intentionality into what I put into that first draft, so that we can make the most of our time together. So,
yeah. And it was really effective. And then one of the things that you also requested in our process was, you asked me to give you questions to answer. So I would read that first draft and then come back with sort of like, what about this? And what about that? And can you explain this? Yeah. And how does this work? And tell me, what do you think it was that was about, rather than just, I could have said the same thing, but stated it as a comment, like explain blah, or, insert a story about blah. But somehow when I posed it as a question, that stimulated your creative process or your generative process. Tell me about what that felt like and how that worked.
So it's a little bit like, I don't know what I don't know, right? Like, I've had this experience, I have this work, I have this body of experience, but I don't know how to share it maybe most effectively. And for whatever reason, maybe it's because I give speeches for a large part of my living, but when you asked me questions, I was like, this research, this story, and this exercise. And all of a sudden it just like clicked together. So for whatever reason, yeah, it was just the questions that would prompt me to say, okay, if I were standing on a stage, how would I answer that? How would I approach that from the audience perspective? And I think we're just lucky that it translated into a decent writing product.
Well, no, not just lucky. We worked hard at that, and it was, there was some skill involved. But I think but that technique of using questions is a really good one, and it's one that that I will use again. I think that it's almost like if you say to somebody, explain X, that's sort of like, oh, okay, well, where do I start? And it's just a little harder to, now I have to kind of come up with an explanation and go into it. But when you're just answering a question, the brain automatically wants to supply an answer, right? So it's just a really great way to get that, get that flow going. What was your process like? What did you like? Did you have a special time or a place, or how did you work?
Yeah. So, every day during the week, I would wake up at 5 a.m. I would meditate. I would have some coffee and sit outside and do a little journaling, kind of get myself oriented for about 30 minutes.
Classic morning routine. Love it.
Exactly. Like I got myself out of the kind of sleepiness into I'm getting ready for the day. And at 5:30 exactly, I would sit down at the computer and I would start to write. And I would take your feedback if there was any, or if I would take some of my material and rework it. But I would write from about 5:30 to 8 or 8:30, depending on what was going on that day, unless I was traveling. I wasn't traveling so much, thankfully, during this period. But without fail, whether I was inspired to write, whether I was excited to write, or really not, which was the case some days, and just getting the words on the paper in that process, I think, was hugely important in having this come together, especially on the timeline that we did it. So
you think that having that regular routine for you was liberating, and you're a morning writer, not an evening writer. I can't write in the evening either. I like my brain is on sort of, yeah, me too. Yeah. Did you have any other kind of like hacks or tricks? Did you do any, dictation or capturing notes somewhere?
I did capture a lot of notes. I just used notes on my iPhone, but I had this perspective going in that, one, I was going to bring my best no matter what. So I wasn't like saving stories for later. If I thought it fit in the beginning, I put it in the beginning. And the second thing I did is I said, no matter how this goes, like whatever happens, it's how it's supposed to happen. It's actually my fifth step, right? How can I accept and surrender to what is? And whenever I would get stuck, it was almost like magic. Somebody would send me an email. I would see a news article. I would have a conversation with my mom that evoked some memory from when I was a kid. It was like everything showed up when it needed to show up. Maybe it was a couple hours, maybe a day or two late, but it just comes when it's got to come.
Amazing. So what was surprising about the experience of writing this book that you learned that you would want to share?
Well, writing a book is a very unique activity, I've learned. I thought like, okay, well, maybe it's just a longer version of a keynote, or it's a bunch of blogs put together, and it's not that. It's got to have a very clear narrative arc, and it's got to fit together in a way that not only logically makes sense to a reader, but is interesting to read.
Yeah.
And looking at it through that lens, like it sounds obvious to say now, but going into it, I was just writing. I was a little bit overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to write 60,000 words over the course of a couple of months?
Yeah.
And so I just started almost a shotgun approach, like just putting everything down. And then I slowed down and said, okay, again, I can't say enough about you and your help, by the way. No. That's probably obvious by now, but I'll say it again.
Do.
To kind of come together on a weekly basis and say, okay, well, what am I trying to say? And why does that matter to the reader? And, again, it sounds stupid obvious when I'm saying it, but I was so overwhelmed in the beginning. It was almost like a new epiphany of, no duh, it's gotta be fun to read. It has to make sense, not just in a microcosm of this chapter or this paragraph, but in its entirety.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that maybe I knew, but discovered it in a new way throughout the process.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think that people sometimes maybe when they're writing a book for the first time and they're not a book making professional, there's maybe just an assumption that being great to read is sort of just a byproduct of something else, or it's just the way that it works out. But no, you need to think about that and think about how you're building on ideas and inserting stories. You had some great colorful stories in there. And it sounds like the collaboration itself was really, really important for you. Like I said, we were working on a super fast timeline. And I remember encouraging you to just like get that draft out, and then we would fix it in the edit, and don't look back, just keep going forward. So, and you really took to that. I remember
I kept saying like, what if, and what if that, and what if, and you just like, just keep going. And it was absolutely the right advice. It didn't feel very good. It was uncomfortable, right?
Right. Cause you know that that's not perfect and you want to go back and fix it, but it's like, no. Just keep a document with notes, keep a document with like, here's how you're going to, keep a separate thing where you go like, oh, chapter 5, I just realized what I got to do to that story to make it work. Okay, great. Keep it in a document. Don't go backward. We're going to keep going forward until it's time to look at the whole thing in one piece. But there was a moment during the writing of the rough draft where you took a little hiatus, Sterling, didn't you?
Right. A hiatus I was worried about because I was in such a great cadence. I'm like, oh no, I'm leaving with like 2 or 3 chapters to go.
Yeah,
and
you were
what if
really
I can't
like,
get back to it?
The end was in sight, and then you're like, "Oh, Maggie, I'm going to go to Peru for 10 days or whatever it was, or 2 weeks or something." Okay, so
that's right.
Tell me about what you were doing on that break. I know what it was, but let's talk about it, and also the nature of the break and how you integrated when you came back to the work.
Yeah. So it was planned in advance. When we were working out the schedule months ahead of time, I knew I was going. We put it in the schedule. Like it was something that I knew was coming.
Yeah. You didn't just buckle and leave town.
Exactly. Like it was part of the plan.
Yeah.
And somewhat ironically, I didn't plan it this way, but as I was getting into the content around surrender, I was going to Peru to spend 2 weeks off the grid, no power, no internet, no even running water, with a local tribe in the middle of the Amazon called the Shipibo, with a group called the Temple of the Whale Light. And during that, you learn a lot about their culture, what they're up to. And there were, I think it was 5 or 6 ayahuasca ceremonies as part of that.
Wow.
The most profound experiences I've ever had in my entire life.
And just as you're dealing with surrender, just like this you have to surrender to that experience, and really go into it and discover it's not. Yeah. So how did that affect the way that you approached your work, the book, the material when you returned to it?
Well, I went in like, okay, maybe I'll get something about the book from these experiences. And then in those experiences, they were so profound, like the book went out the window. It was about me, my survival, my life. What am I doing in the world? Like, who am I? Like really big questions came up. And I can't say enough about the experience, especially with the group that I did it with. And I came back, and it did take a couple of days to kind of reorient myself to the Western world. And I can't tell you how grateful I was for running water and air conditioning and being part of modern society again.
Yeah, things we take for granted. Yeah.
But looking back on it, I was like, wait a minute, I've got all this great content and perspective around surrender now. And it was, again, unplanned, but perfectly worked with what I was starting to write. Some of the most, probably most important content in the book, I think.
I love that chapter so much. And I love the concept of surrender. I think that, surrendering to the flow of the universe and opening to a larger possibility than what I might be able to imagine to myself. Those are some of the most powerful, gentle, powerful sort of things you can do when you're approaching life. But you helped me to see surrender in this other way that I hadn't really thought about before, which was as you mentioned earlier, literally, a different definition of surrender, which is to give over. So there's surrendering, which is just like to yield. And then there's surrendering, which is to hand in or give over. And that has to do with, what you mentioned earlier, like you have to surrender the cash, you have to surrender the time, you have to surrender, surrender your possessions at the
resources. Exactly.
You give those things over. So tell me, what did you have to surrender in order to get this book done?
Well, the things I was paying most attention to early on was the time and the money.
Yeah.
We did it as a hybrid process. So there was a budget that I had to bring to the table, and it is a meaningful budget for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it was saying, okay, I'm going to spend this amount of money, and I'm going to take what I know is going to be a lot of time. It ended up being more time than I thought, but I had a lot of time scheduled, and saying, okay, this is just what it takes to write a book. I did my diligence ahead of time. I talked to a lot of different publishers and people that had written books and had different partners. And early on, I just felt like we had the connection and the business model that was going to make this make sense. And it was letting go. After that, it was letting go of how I thought it was supposed to go, because I wanted to do it one way. All of your expertise and all the books that you published and been involved with, you have a way that is best done. And I had to let go of how I thought I wanted to do it for the way that it is best done. And it was absolutely the right decision. Again, uncomfortable, but the right way to go.
And just for those who aren't familiar with it, so what you're talking about is that because we are a hybrid publisher, that means that the authors are the funding bodies they're in the investors in their own book, and so that meant that that you had some fees to pay up front, and that allowed you to access the level of support that was appropriate for you in terms of all of that coaching and things like that and getting it done. So for you, it made sense. But like just even having to, so all the money, all the time, would tell me, and I don't know, maybe you're not going to say
and how I wanted it to go.
Was it worth it? There you go. There's my question. Was it worth it? And I recognize that I might be not the person that you would be the most candid with about that, but.
Well, totally. I would. I mean, what I've loved about our relationship is I asked in the beginning, I was like, tell me the truth. Like, let me know if what I'm writing is total crap or if there are some nuggets of wisdom in there that are helpful. And so, I wouldn't do anything but tell you the truth back. And there were many points throughout the writing process where I said to myself, what are you doing, Sterling? This is insane. It's not only a lot of money and a tremendous amount of time, but is anybody even going to read this book? Right. Is this going to matter? And I got that shipment of the advanced reader copies, the same one you have there. I've got it behind me somewhere. And I opened that thing up and I took the book out and I held it in my hands. And I cannot describe how profound that experience is. Like, I made a book.
Yeah.
Thousands upon thousands of people have contributed to helping me get the perspective and coach me and actually write it and all the things that went through it. But taking it out of that box is like, wow.
Yeah.
There's a book here. And I made that. And it was almost like, I don't care if anybody reads it after that, because it was almost worth it, or it was worth it, just to go through that process and discover the things in myself and my teachings that came out in it.
That is amazing to hear. Oh my God. Yeah. So gratifying. And now you're poised on the brink of your publication day.
That's right.
At the time that we're recording this, that day is still in the future, only just, but you've got, I think you're going to do like a live signing event at Tattered Cover in Denver, where close to where you live. And you've got all kinds of other promotional activities, planned. So tell me, and again, from a learning perspective for people who are considering, what does it really take to write a book and put it out there? Tell me briefly about like, what are some of the things that you are now doing? Because the project isn't over, right? Like, now it's time to launch it. So this is a whole new phase of it. What are you doing to launch and promote the book?
Yeah, it really does feel like a brand new phase. Like, this is a whole nother project now to take that book that I held in my hands and share it with the world. And I think there's probably three key things that I've done that I think would be important for anybody wanting to get their message out there. The first is like sharing it on social media myself. I've got a fairly active following on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and some of the other social accounts, although I'm not on TikTok yet. But talking about the process as I was going through it, sharing, different bits and pieces of, here's some covers we're considering. And I've got this one idea. I'm not quite sure how to share it. Can you give me some stories, or how would you look at these examples? So I had some audience engagement going on ahead of time and sharing like, okay, now that we've been through that, here it comes. Here's the chance to pre-order. It's coming out June 21st. Here's the links to Barnes & Noble and Amazon, I think is huge, because I've seen a couple other authors go through and like they don't post about it. I'm like, you wrote a book. You have to tell somebody about it. Most importantly, your friends and family who you're probably connected to on some of the social media. So that was one. Mm-hmm. The second, so I've got the Street Gang, which are the people that help you achieve what you want to achieve. What I've learned from you and your team, Maggie, is that when you're launching a book, you have what's called a street team. Mm-hmm. And these are people that I've recruited, former clients, current clients, friends, of course, family, that commit to reading the book, an early copy of it. So they all have it right now, a digital version. They commit to buying it, and then they commit to sharing it, most importantly, when the launch day comes, so they can kind of share it with their community. So that was key. And then the third thing is we've got a PR group that starts to share that with some of the larger media and podcasts out there. They're taking it to TV channels and news publications and people that have a bigger voice out in the world, or a specific community that they're talking to. And they're saying, hey, here's Sterling, here's his message on hunting discomfort and how you get results no matter what. And is that something that fits with your audience? And, we've already got some interviews and things lined up through that. And I think that just takes the message and kind of puts a loudspeaker on it and amplifies it for many more people to hear it.
Absolutely. And I know that
was a lot of stuff, Maggie.
No, it's good. And there's more detail, right? There's more to it than that too. I know. And actually, I know that our sales and marketing director, Jen, she was really impressed also with, the sort of like, I think you have like kind of a swipe file or something that's sort of like prepackaged bundles that you are offering to your to people who book you for speaking engagements, and other kinds of ways for them, bulk discounts, ways for people to buy in. So a lot of people, when they're putting a book out, creating the book is its own sort of like anxiety provoking, triggers a lot of self-doubt. And then when you have done it, sharing it is a whole other kind of like type of self-doubt. People get shy. They feel like they're begging for attention. Yeah. They feel like they're, like they're asking for approval, and they get really shy about it. So tell me, have you experienced any of that? Are you feeling nervous about the reception, or what will people think of it?
I think I've experienced all of it, Maggie. Well, the writing process was very inner focus. It was very reflective and understanding things and thinking about things and studying things. And it was a very relative quiet process for me, because it was me at 5:30 in the morning, just kind of writing some of these things. And now it is almost a total 180, which is, okay, now you wrote it, now go talk about it. And it's getting back to really my roots of being a keynote speaker and sharing about it in the world. And, a lot of, even through the writing process, I would experience these points where I thought, well, this is stupid. Who wants to read it? Nobody's going to read it. You're a total failure, Sterling. Nothing is going to amount of this. And maybe you shouldn't even launch it. Actually, after I'd finished writing, I had the thought, maybe I shouldn't send it out there. Maybe I should just call it quits right here.
Oh my God, smother it in its crib.
You believe that? I didn't tell you that, Maggie.
You did not tell me that.
I had some other Street Gang members over here. They're like, stop, Sterling. You're getting crazy.
You're like, hell no, you are not doing that.
But it does trigger a lot of discomfort. And, I think it's, I've got a lot of gratitude for my Street Gang here that helped me put it together. for you, for the people that have held me accountable to bring it forward, because it is a vulnerable thing, and it feels like you're putting yourself in the world.
Well, it's amazing to hear you say that, because I know you as a very confident person. I know you as, a committed person, even, like I said, an audacious person at times when needed. And yet even, you have felt like jitters about this all the way through.
Totally.
So, okay. What has the reception been like? Because I know that some people have read it, and part two to the question is, what will you do if you have a critical review? How will you cope with that?
Yeah. So I was very kind of strategic with the first couple of readers. The first reader outside of our, writing group was my mom.
I was going to say, it's got to be your mom, right?
It had to be my mom, from everything that we've been through.
Yeah.
So I gave it to my mom, and I was like, she loves me. She's coming from a good place. So if she tells me it's bad, then I'm really in trouble.
It's not too late to stop the presses, right?
Right. But she was like, Sterling, this is really fantastic. And you've brought some ideas forward that I've been thinking about, or you experienced, and I've seen you grow and change from that low point when you were living with me. And you put it into a book form, and not only a way that conveys that information, but it's kind of fun to read. I was like, okay, so I'm off to a good start.
Okay, so your mom liked it. Step one, right?
My mom liked it. She's my number one fan. So like we said, if she didn't, I was in trouble.
Play to a warm room. Okay, right. So
right. And I felt like if I had a couple of people close to me that said it was okay, that's all I needed. And then I started sharing it out with other authors and the street team and everybody else. And the reviews have been phenomenal. Like some of the things that these authors have come back and said, like 5 times New York Times bestselling authors come back and are like, Sterling, this is great. Here's a testimonial about how you need to hunt discomfort to achieve what you want to achieve in life and business. I'm like, unreal.
Like, can you call out a few individuals who were great supporters for you, that they led their support to the book?
Colonel Waldo Waldman's a phenomenal friend of mine. He's been a huge support. Josh Linkner has been a friend of mine and mentor in the speaking world. He's another one. Vernice Fly Girl Armour, the first African-American fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force. She's come back with rave reviews, and to hear these things, not only from other speakers, but from people like the chief business officer of a company called Accelerate 360 they're the second biggest publisher in the US with Us Weekly and Men's Journal, like all these big publications. He's like, Sterling, this is phenomenal. This is the kind of material we need in our business. Can we buy can we get a bulk deal on buying a bunch of books for my team? And I'm like, yes, you may. And like, I can't even believe you're talking about my book.
Amazing.
It almost feels unreal.
Okay. So then to the second part of my question, have you mentally prepared yourself for, because it's inevitable. Every single book that's ever been published is going to get a critical review at some point. Are you thinking ahead to that, or are you just going to deal with it as and when it comes, or
so I've been talking about discomfort for a long time now. And there are people in the world that are just vehemently opposed to it for whatever reason.
To discomfort.
And so to discomfort, right? And using it for growth or experiencing it in any form. And obviously I don't agree with that, but okay, that's a perspective. And what I have is a perspective, and they're just different views of reality. And, I can point to research and stories and results in my own life and the businesses I work with that show that it works. But if you don't like it, no problem. And as you pointed, I'm sure it's just a matter of time until I get a negative review on the book. And it's like, at this point, I'm okay with that. Like I put myself into, call it 250 pages. And it is what it is. And I've learned a lot of things from it. And I might do some things differently next time, but I did the best that I could with what I had. And, if there's a couple of people that don't like it, I'm okay with that.
And you did it.
All that I can bring.
It's like Brene Brown says about the man in the arena, right? Or she wasn't. She's quoting who is it? I can't even remember who said that originally. But yeah,
it's the president, I think.
Yeah, yes. It was the president.
Johnson, maybe.
JFK. I don't know who said it. Well, anyway, but no, it's an amazing accomplishment, and you're absolutely right. Like just the fact of, it's never going to be perfect. And we just, at the end of the day,
I would still change things, and it's already gone to press.
Yeah. I know. And you know what? I mean, I write also, and I just submitted an essay to a magazine, and this morning while I was like doing yoga, I was like, oh, I got to tell them to change the ending of that sentence. Like it's ringing in my mind. But you know what? At the end of the day, you got to ship it. Right. If we've learned anything from the world of business, you know, just like it's good. It's don't let perfect be the enemy of done or something like that. So.
Yeah. Well, that's the piece of getting a tattoo, right? Mm-hmm. Committing in a way where there was no going back. There was a drop dead date to go to press, and a number of however many thousand copies we ordered. Yeah. And we hit that date because there was money, there was time, there was reputation. There's all these things on the line. And you know, I would have been editing forever. Yeah, you're not.
You're not going to give yourself a situation where you have the freedom to just sit there and fiddle with it for years and years and years. Okay,
we'll put it in the second book, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, great segue. Very nicely done. I was going to ask, what's next for you, and what are you doing throughout the, in your life and work for the rest of this year?
Well, maybe there will be a second book, but it won't be this year for sure. This year is totally focused on the launch and the book tour and all the speaking engagements, and just, continuing to share the message, to spread the word, working with companies and people that live what I would call a no matter what life, like getting the results that they really want on however big or however small a scale, and giving them the tools to do that.
So who can work with you? Like what kind of I know you mentioned the no matter what community. So that is a community that anybody can join. Tell us where to find it. But also I want to know like who, so if I'm listening to the podcast and I'm like, I got to have that guy come and speak, what kinds of groups would you speak to or expect to speak to?
Yeah. Well, anybody can join the no matter what community. There's no rules. It doesn't cost something. You can find all the material for joining up on sterlinghawkins.com. We've got a Facebook group and emails and all sorts of cool stuff that you can find there.
Great.
But it's really a message for people and companies that want to grow. And maybe they're stuck. Maybe they're encountering some kind of adversity. Maybe something's in the way. Maybe they've been through a very difficult time, which many of us have coming out of a pandemic. But it's those companies that can look at all of that and say, okay, we've got a lot of circumstances, we've got a lot of problems, and yet here's the difference that we're committed to making in the world. Again, however big or however small. And it's those kinds of people that are committed to growth regardless of the circumstances that I've got a message for.
Oh, that's so awesome. It's been a super inspiring conversation. Any parting thoughts to share?
Well, first, thanks to you, Maggie, not only for having me on, but being such a tremendous partner through this crazy journey of writing a book that felt really good. It felt right. It felt like something that I needed to do. And I can't thank you enough for that. And for anybody that's listening to this, if you're denying the discomfort of moving forward and writing a book or doing anything, if you're denying that discomfort, it's really denying a part of yourself. And if you want to reach your full potential, you've got to go into that discomfort. And there's no telling what you might do with it, but I'm here to support every step of the way.
Oh my God, I couldn't have said it better. That's
Thank
awesome,
you, Maggie.
Sterling. Okay. And where can people find you? You mentioned sterlinghawkins.com. Give us your other handles. Right. We'll put them in the show notes too, but for those who don't feel like looking at show notes, what are your handles?
Well, I'm Sterling Hawkins on just about all the social media, and I'm readily findable. There's not a lot of Sterling Hawkinses, or there are some. So you're looking for the Sterling Hawkins that looks like this. And if you want to learn about the book, exactly. And all the book materials on huntingdiscomfort.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate you.
I really hope this conversation has inspired you to give so much of your gift to the world that it expands you into your greatest possible version of yourself. Remember, it's not selfish just because we also benefit from it. And here's where I get to make a selfish request. New podcasts need all the help they can get. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate the show and subscribe to us on your favorite platform. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Selfish Gift Podcast. And send me a DM. I'd love to hear how you're sharing your gift with the world.